Be the Bridge community. I am so excited. I have someone on here that I've listened to for a while. Had no idea we'll be face to face on Zoom, but we are. And it's a pleasure to introduce her, if you haven't heard of her, to our community. And I know you're going to welcome her with loving arms. Miss Tasha Cobbs Leonard. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm awesome.
It's
Super
good.
excited to be talking to you today.
I am so grateful that you are here. And let me just tell you guys a little bit about Miss Tasha Cobbs Leonard. She's a pastor's daughter, born and raised in Georgia. She's the first to emerge to a widespread acclaim with her breakout 2013 release, Grace, which garnered a Grammy, 3 Doves, and 3 Stellar Awards on the strength of it, chart topping, platinum selling lead single, Break Every Chain. So everybody, we those of you listening, yes, this is Break Every Chain, Tasha Cobbs. In the years that followed, Leonard would go on to establish herself as a genuine gospel sensation, racking up more than 2 billion streams across platforms, landing 3 more #1 singles and 5 #1 albums, performing with everyone from Common, Nicki Minaj, Ne-Yo, Ciara, and making national television appearances on Good Morning America, CNN, BET, and all the things. She is a tireless advocate for empowerment and positivity. She has added author to her resume, actress, entrepreneur, and worship leader at the Purpose Place Church in her adopted home of South Carolina, where she co-pastors with her husband, producer Kenneth Leonard Jr. So let's welcome Tasha Cobbs. How you doing?
I'm doing good on this beautiful day.
I know. Listen, after reading all of that, I need a sip of water. Like, come on now. Would you would you have ever thought that God would use you to create this type of impact beyond the music industry?
Hmm.
You know?
You know, I kind of ponder on that question often, and I
Mhm.
think I don't really have a definite answer, but I will say this. I think it's all a part of a consistent yes.
Mm,
Like I've been in a season where I was leading worship at my dad's church back at
mhm,
home, 150 people there, and I was just as passionate, just as committed, just as faithful to that yes as I am to all of the ones we have
mm,
today.
mm.
So I don't know if it was an expectation, but I will say that I know where the trust from God has come from, and that's the faithfulness in every season. So
Wow.
my expectation is whatever you call me to do next, it's a yes. If it's to go to, 150 people or go to Spartanburg to start a
Yeah,
church, my answer is yes, because he's been
yeah,
so faithful in every other season.
right. So you were living in Georgia and you left Georgia to start the church in South Carolina.
Not necessarily. So I grew up in Georgia. I grew up
Okay.
in Southeast Georgia. So my
Okay.
father started to pastor when I was 10 years old in
Uh-huh.
Jessup, Georgia. It's a little small town.
Oh yeah.
It's about an hour from Savannah, an hour from Jacksonville. So I grew up on the coast. Beautiful,
Okay.
beautiful place. But I moved to Atlanta in 2006. And
Okay.
so I operated there for a while as a worship pastor at a church in Atlanta. And in 2017, I got married to Kenneth Leonard. And
Okay.
that's when I became a Carolina girl. So our first year of marriage, we actually lived in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
And then after a year of being there, we moved to South Carolina, and we've been here for almost 5 years. Yep.
I told you how much we have in common. I was born and raised in Carolina. So North Carolina.
Really? What part?
Yeah. Fayetteville, North Carolina.
My daughter is graduating Fayetteville State, May 11th.
You see, I'm
Yes.
telling you. And I
Yep.
have so many relatives that went to Fayetteville State. So that is
Wow.
so
Yep.
good. I'm telling you. And then I live in Atlanta now.
Do you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I
in
was in Atlanta for
Atlanta.
14 years.
Yeah. So we just keep missing each other, but I'm
I
not.
know, right?
I'm not coming to South Carolina now.
No. You come here and see it though. It's beautiful. How
Yeah,
long have
it
you
is
been in
beautiful.
Atlanta?
I've been in Atlanta. I moved to Atlanta originally in '96,
Oh, good.
and
Yeah.
and then I left Atlanta in 2012
Okay.
and moved to Austin, Texas, where this is where I
Really?
started Be the Bridge, and
Okay.
then moved back in 2017. So you were
Wow.
leaving when I was coming back.
Yep.
So that is good. So now we have, as I was saying, there's so much in common, and I know you just written a book,
Yeah.
and it says "Do It Anyway." And listen, and I just remember that's kind of like a mantra that I kind of quote, like, do it afraid,
Yep.
if you don't know what to do, if you're confused, just do the next right thing, the next right thing. And your book is entitled Do It Anyway. Why did you title your book Do It Anyway?
Well, I'd love to start here. This is
Uh-huh.
a great question. I'm sure people have this
Uh-huh.
question for me. When in 2013, when I
Uh-huh.
released my album Grace, I was nominated, you just read it, for
Yeah.
several awards that year. And there were two of the award shows that were back to back. It was the Stellar Awards and then the Grammys. They were 7 days apart.
Okay.
And I grew up as a pastor's kid, and it was like what you think. I was down home country. My dad was the pastor he was the last one to leave the church. He was turning off the lights. He was turning off the thermostat. He wanted to make sure that the light bill wasn't going to be $1,000, right?
Right.
And so, we did vacations from Sunday evenings to Saturday so that we could be back at church on Sundays. This is how committed he was to being at our local church. And the Stellar Awards were actually on a Sunday. And so I was thinking, oh man, Daddy not gonna be able to come. We have church. But my parents, they decided to come to the awards that year,
Wow.
which I tell it all the time. That meant more to me than any award, to look out
Wow.
and see them. That was such a reward to me. I sang Break Every Chain that night. They gave me 60 seconds. I said, I'm going to do as much as I can.
And I remember it.
Right.
I remember it.
And during that same time, I was nominated for a Grammy, and Daddy kept saying, I'm going to be with you in Nashville at the Stellars, but Daddy's not going to LA, but I want you to go anyway. And so I remember after winning the Stellar Awards, we sat up all night. Daddy had us laughing. It was just, first of all, it was just unheard of for him to be there. And then he also stayed up laughing and joking with us all night. It was just a night to remember, honestly. And I remember at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, they were getting ready to go back to their hotel room, him and my mother. And I remember him just beaming with pride. I won 3 awards that night. And I tell people my dad was a carpenter like Jesus. So he had built a curio, like a curio for all of my awards that he knew his baby girl was going to win one day. So he had built it. And my commitment to him was that every award that I won, you can take them home with you. They're yours. And so he had all of my awards in his hand. I was like, Daddy, take it out. I want to take a picture, of you holding it. So he was standing in front of the elevator, held it up in his hands, and I snapped a picture of him. And that would be the last time I saw my father here on earth. The next day he went home to be with God. And I just could not forget his voice ringing in my head, though. Daddy's not going to be with you in LA, but I want you to go to the Grammys anyway. I want you to go anyway. And so I went to the Grammys, and that year, a little country girl from Jessup, Georgia, won a Grammy Award for my song, Break Every Chain. And I would not have been in the room. My heart was broken. Life was just foggy. But the one thing that was clear was that one lesson that my dad left with me, that sometimes life is going to get hard. Your heart is going to be broken. You're going to be confused, but I want you to dig deep within yourself. And Tasha, Daddy wants you to do it anyway. So I get to give that last lesson to all of the people who will receive this book, Do It Anyway. I give them the lesson my dad left with me.
Wow. That's powerful. As I was telling you, we share that same grief of losing our fathers suddenly.
Yes.
And I can tell you're a daddy's girl.
Yes.
Just like me. And,
the definition.
yes, I'm telling you. And my first book hit New York Times, and my dad was there to actually experience that. He was on my
Oh,
last
that's
book tour with
awesome.
me. He was a part of the
Wow.
book tour. And so he got to see that like, your father
Oh,
got to see this accomplishment that he knew
yeah.
that was coming. So, so proud of you.
Right.
So as you're telling this story, I'm thinking of that same story. What are some things, because you talk about to do it anyways, but what are some things that you hold on, that you're holding tight, that your dad taught you, that you're going to
Mhm.
leave for your children?
Yes. The main thing, my dad was a man of very few words. Like when he
Mm,
spoke, it was going to be one of two things. It was going to be either hilarious or it's super profound. There was no in between.
okay.
So he didn't talk a lot. However, my mother is the one that's gonna call you 3, 4 times a day, especially my brother. She and my
Okay.
brother like, and
Okay.
so I would be on the phone with mom and dad. He would just throw out little words, throw out little stuff. But every time we would end the conversation, he would always say, "Baby, stay at the feet of Jesus." And as a 5, 6 year old, you don't technically understand all of what that means. But the older I get, and the more life happens, just that posture itself, it settles you. That even
Yeah.
when life gets hard,
Yeah.
I am settled in the fact that
Mm,
God is in control of my life because I'm committed to staying at his feet. So that was one of the lessons that my father left with me. And of course, this do it anyway,
yeah.
and he lived that out. He said that to me verbally, but it was also something that he lived out.
Wow.
I witnessed him come from a childhood of poverty. He would tell us these stories all the time. He joked about it, but it was the truth. Sometimes having to sleep outside on the porch, and sometimes
Hmm.
having to share clothing with your younger siblings. And I
Hmm.
remember him making a promise. Well, my mom tells the story that he made a promise to her that when they got married, I'm going to build you a house from the ground up. I saw my father build our home from the ground up, the house that I grew up in my high school years. And it took him a while, but he was committed to that promise that he gave her. I saw
Wow.
him build our church from the ground up. I saw him build that community of people. And so it wasn't just something that he left to me verbally. It was a demonstration. He lived the life of do it anyway before me. When the
Wow.
odds were completely stacked against him, whatever he committed to, he was going to finish the work. And so, those are some of the lessons that he left with me.
I love that, Tasha. I love that. And I think it's so good to honor our elders, to honor,
Yes.
um, and for people like even our audience to hear these stories of just ordinary, everyday Black men.
Yep. Yes.
It counters some of the stereotypes
Hmm.
that we
Yep.
fight against. And
Right.
so
I talk about that. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I love that
no,
you said that because I talk about that in my book. How,
yes.
in the day and age that my father grew
Hmm.
up in, he didn't have an example before him
Mm,
of Black men entrepreneurs or people who were doing, because I really feel that if he would have just had the right push or the right mentor,
yeah.
he would have been a strong entrepreneur. I mean, he taught leadership in our church and he built our church so well, but I believe that there was so much more had he just had the right person saying, hey, if you do it this way or you
Yeah.
make this decision, so I love what you're saying. But
Yeah.
even in the midst of not having that example before him, he
Yeah.
did everything he could to be
Right.
successful for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if he would have had like that social capital or that access,
Yeah.
the sky's the limit. But look what
Mhm.
God did through him,
Wow.
with what he knew. And I think that's so
Yep.
many of our stories. I'm several years older than you, and I tell the story like I am the first person in my family with that was born in my immediate family with a full set of rights. That my parents were born into segregation, and
Yeah.
so like putting that in perspective, that could have been the case for your parents
Yep.
too. But
Mhm.
we're only one generation removed,
Wow.
from that when we start talking
Mhm.
about systemic racism, and I think that's an important part. Your
Yeah.
books, shares like a vulnerable part of you.
Mhm.
What made this time? What made you this time share those experiences in this way? Like, there's some things that you're talking about that you've never talked about.
Yeah.
What made you really kind of pour your heart out in this book?
I think building an audience of people who trust you, it takes
Mm-hmm.
time. I believe that over the years through my music, they've had an opportunity to experience glimpses of my testimony.
Okay.
Moments where I was able to share, hey, I was grieved when I wrote this song, or I was on a mountain just excited. It was an exciting season of my life when I wrote that song. But I've not had the opportunity to really expound on the testimonies that made these songs,
Okay.
or why I can sing the song Break Every Chain with so much passion and expect chains to be broken in people's lives, because I experienced that chain breaking power myself. People don't have an opportunity to hear those stories. And so I felt like my audience and the people who have followed me for a while were now in a place where they're open to receive. I trust you. I trust you with your music. I trust you to be able to lead me into the presence of God. But now I trust your wisdom and the knowledge that you've experienced over your lifetime. And I really, really just felt like this pull that there is more that people want. And I felt like this was the season for it. So that's where that's I'm a seasoned kind of person. Like, I believe that I don't want to move prematurely, and I don't want to be too late either. I believe being right in the middle of God's will for our lives.
Yeah. And your passion and your love of Jesus comes across in your music. I think that's what is so attractive, especially the song Break Every Chain, because that was a song originally, I forget who originally did that song.
Jesus Culture.
Okay. Jesus Culture originally. So that was
written by this guy named Will Regan, and I had a chance to really meet him and talk to him. Ooh, such a great guy. Yeah.
Okay. And so Jesus Culture originally, so like in the spaces that I'm in and the spaces I was in at that time, I was living in Austin, Texas, and the song, had come out. So a lot of people were familiar with the song through Jesus Culture. And so there was this big conference called the If Gathering. And there was a girl there, Melinda Doolittle. Do you know her?
Yes,
Yeah. She did that Tasha Cobb version, right? And we were there, and this one, a lot of people had never heard your version.
Right.
And so, when you start singing that part, there's power in the name of Jesus.
Yes.
And that part.
I hear the chains falling.
Yes, I hear the chains falling. Yes. And she did that part, and she was like, let me tell you, it was like you were there with her singing that song.
Wow.
And this place now, let me tell you, like, this last conference, they had 14,000 women, 14,000. So in this one, it was probably about, at that time, probably about 5,000 or so in the audience. And when she said that, one of my friends, she's a white lady, she said, I feel like running. She had never experienced. I was like, that's what gospel music could do, child.
Yes.
We put you put your little stank on it,
That's right.
And I love that, and I love the versatility of artists and worship leaders, especially African Americans. We can do CCM, we can do gospel, we'll do country, because all of that is a part of our story. And so, like with you, and I know you do that, but I know people try to box you in.
Right.
So talk about it, Tasha. Tell us a little bit about why we shouldn't box,
my goodness,
as a gospel artist and why you want to be free to try different, genres of music or different styles.
Yeah, let me just share this. First of all, I grew up on country music. So country music is literally today, literally one of my favorite genres of music. So I just love the storytelling. Say it again.
I said, you heard it here. Okay,
right.
Country.
I love the storytelling. I love the versatility and the styles of presentation with your vocals. I love the vocal control that has to be used in singing country music. And I love that they make the difficulty of it seem so simplistic. Like it's not easy to do. And then here's the other thing. It was nothing. Me and my cousins, my brother, all of us, we would hang out at my grandmother's house after school until our parents would come pick us up. It was nothing to walk in the house and MTV rock and roll is blasting. My brother loved rock music. And so I believe that but all of it is infused with gospel. When you think about it, there is some part of the foundation of every genre. You're going to find that passion. They talk about Aretha and the soul. When you hear soul, they got that from gospel music, you know? And so I really feel like it is important to be, and maybe you don't sing it all, but just have some type of understanding of the different genres and styles of music. Because the Bible talks about sometimes being all things to all people. I want to be able to relate when I'm in any arena, whether I'm at an award show or if I'm in the White House or if I'm in a predominantly Black church or if I'm in a Christian community. I want to be able to present in a way that the audience that's in front of me can receive my ministry presentation and still be authentically me. You know, that's what I pray that my life has been, and that's been my intentionality, to present that in myself in so many different ways. So I have an album I did. It's called Royalty. I recorded it at the Ryman, and there were several songs on that album that just have like this country vibe. We did like the piccolo guitar, and it was just, I wanted to go back to some of my roots in that's not always just gospel music, you know? And so I pulled on that country side that my mom used to listen to all the time. So I just love versatility in music.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think diversity in the genres is something that is welcome. I like to tell people on the other side of eternity, you think we're just going to be singing like gospel or Elevation or Maverick City? Like, you think like that's all you're going to hear? Like, I mean, think about globally music, globally. That's
so good.
You know, outside of our American culture, if we're talking about, we're a part of a global faith. Christianity is a global faith. And so there are going to be aspects of things that we're not used to hearing, you know, like when, you know, the tribes in India and, you know, Africa and all these places that we're not used to hearing. And so I think we have to really start thinking outside of the box and really stop believing that this is your lane, you need to stay in this lane, and this person need to stay in this lane, and this person need to stay in this lane, and let God use people the way God wants to use people, you know, because you never know who you're going to encounter and who you're going to help, you know, through that. Now, you talk about, you know, just we have a ministry within Be the Bridge for transracial adoptees. You know, you're not a transracial adoptee, but you have adopted, and I want you to talk a little bit, just share a little bit with our community. And one reason why I want to share that is because a lot of times people, you know, there are a lot of kids that are up for adoption, look like you and I, you know, and we don't even have time to get into the systemic issues of even that reasoning, you know, but we do adopt, and we also take care of our family members, you know, so that they don't get put up for adoption. So there's a lot of that in our community. I really talk about some of that experience with our audience and your son Asher.
Yes, I love this conversation. I think I have to just kind of go back a little bit to a little bit more of the story. My husband and I have endometriosis. And so for about 2 years, we tried, you know, giving natural birth and having a baby, and we just could not conceive. And so I went to a doctor to find out that I had severe endometriosis. And so for a year, we would fly from North Carolina to Houston so that I can receive an injection to clear the endometriosis from my body. And so imagine it. Just imagine how that wears. That in itself just is a wear on your body, on your spirit. And so after about a year of doing that, the doctor said, you should be in a space now where it's clear enough for you to do the in vitro if you decide. And so we decided to go with IVF. And, you know, I'm a church girl, so, you know, people have come and they're like, you're going to have a baby. God's going to give you a baby. God, you know, and I tell the story this way. I have a friend who talks about this, that, you know, sometimes we hear God's will and we don't stick around to hear his way. And so,
so good, Tasha.
We try to devise our way and create God's way. And so that's what my husband and I did. We said, hey, we're going to go IVF. We're going to do this. And so we went through the IVF. and we lost the embryo. We had one embryo and we lost that baby. And I was devastated. My heart was broken. And I just be very honest, my faith was shaken, because here I am thinking, you've sent all these people to us telling us we're going to have a baby. And where's the promise? I can't create eggs anymore. We used the one embryo that we had. And so here we are. We have a promise, and that's all we have. And I remember a few months after that, my husband, he came and he had a conversation with me. He said, babe, what do you think about adoption? And I literally did not just hear my husband's voice. I heard this being God's way. Like, hey, this is the way that he desires for us to, fulfill this prophecy. And so I remember us going through the process, and I said often, I didn't have like the normal natural labor, but I had labor. We went through labor because adoption is not always easy, and you don't know what's at the other end. You don't know if you're going to get in the middle of a process and a birth mother changes her mind. You don't know how it's going to go. You don't know if you're going to if your family is going to pass all of the tests that you have to go through. And so we were in a season of labor for about 6 months. And then it's so good to have people in your corner where when you can't think clearly, see clearly, or even hear God clearly, they can hear for you. And we had an agent who was she was so beautiful. She was just a gift from God who would just keep us encouraged the entire time. She would just sometimes send us prayers and just uplift us. Hey, God's going to come through. There's a beautiful baby at the other end of this for you. I believe for you. And just having her there was such an amazing experience for us. And so we turned in our paperwork. We created our profile. And we submitted our profile to 4 agencies. And she said, we're just going to wait now. Now, this is the season of waiting. And she was very honest, because there are some people who may have experienced this, who may be watching now, that some people have waited 2 years, 4 years. And there are people who've never gotten a child through the adoption process. And so she was very honest that, sometimes this could take a long time and sometimes it may not. And 3 days later, this is our miracle testimony. 3 days later, she called us and she said, I don't know how this happened. In all of my 20 years in working in this system, I've never seen this. She said there was a mother who walked into an agency in Louisiana, and I don't know how this agency got your information. It was not one of the 4 that we applied to. And she said, you are one of 7 families that she's going to be choosing from for this baby boy. And she said, it's an African-American baby boy, fits the profile. And she said, your profile fits everything that she desires for her, the child that she's carrying. And so we're sitting there like, of course, there's so many thoughts going through your head. Like, okay, is this real? Is this going to be a letdown? We didn't want to get too excited, And she said, Kenny, I really, really feel like you should sit and write a handwritten letter to the mother. And so my husband, he came to the office and he wrote a letter telling the story about how we had been trying to have a baby and how our other children were excited about receiving a sibling. And they screenshot it and they sent it to this birth mother. And the next day, they called and said, she's chosen you guys. I mean, we literally just sat in silence for it's unbelievable how God can come through when you're in his will, And so we sat there and we're thinking, is this real? Is she going to change her mind? And we had an opportunity to have a couple conversations with her. And in one of them, my husband asked her, what was the one thing? If it was just one thing that made you choose us, what was that? And her response was, I was reading your letter. And she said, as I was reading the letter you wrote me, she said, the baby started kicking. She said, I didn't choose you. He did. And I mean,
oh my goodness.
4 weeks later, Asher was born, and we picked up our baby boy from the hospital, and he's been with us almost 3 years now.
Oh my goodness. And now hearing that backstory, not knowing all the things that you were going through, and hearing that backstory, that if those of you who follow you on social media or anything, it's like you saw a baby and you were like, okay, what? And
right.
And for the longest, I thought, oh, maybe it's a nephew, just like us glancing through.
But he looks like us, right?
Yeah. I mean, wow, like that's incredible. I mean, you talk about so much, in some of your chapters in your book. You talk about in the midst of grief, in the pursuit of passion, battling giants, in love, in times of despair,
Yeah.
in waiting, and
Yeah.
some of that. I'm pretty sure, as you're talking about in waiting, and then you say unfulfilled dreams,
Mm-hmm.
and then the last chapter you say in the limelight.
Yes.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
tell me a little bit about that and the pressures of that, and and why you wrote that chapter.
Yeah, because I feel like in the world that we live in, the glitz and the glamour and the lights, camera, action can seem it could be so enticing,
Yeah,
especially now with social media, and it looks like everybody is just living on a mountain, and here I am in the slums,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that's what it'll make you feel like.
Yep.
And the truth is that a lot of times, when you're in the spotlight, when you're in the limelight,
Hmm.
it requires I'm a church girl. I have to say it like this: to whom much is given, much is required. You carry
Hmm.
such a weight. There were seasons where I went through depression, where I couldn't share it. I couldn't tell anybody because everybody expected this
Hmm.
perfection from, oh, this is the break every chain girl, and give me more and more and more. I want to be
Right.
healed. I want to be set free. And I remember going to concerts and singing that song and watching people be delivered, watching
Hmm.
families be healed and mended. And I would go home for days in the dark with the curtains closed, under the comforter, literally struggling with depression, anxiety, and fear. But you don't see that. You see the
Hmm.
limelight,
Hmm.
you see the awards and you
Yeah.
see the pretty dresses. But a lot of times it's a huge weight to carry. And sometimes you don't feel like getting up doing it. You don't feel
Right.
like, getting up singing the song that's going to uplift everybody. And here you are in this place where you're not so happy and you don't feel the joy. And so I wanted to write that chapter for those people who may now you're walking out this career that you've wanted all of these years. You're walking out the promise, and now the challenge that you face is the promise. The promise is it's heavy. It's weighty, and it's not all of this rah 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 joy 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 that everybody thought it would be. But now is your answer still yes?
Mm.
When you have to carry this major weight, when people's eyes are on you and they're expecting this and expecting that, and you got to meet this deadline, and the timeline is just adding up. So I wanted to write that chapter, for those people who are now, I'm in the midst of the promise. I'm in this place that was promised to me, and now this is even harder than the process.
Yeah.
Just carrying all of the weight that comes with the limelight. And so that's what I want to be, an encouragement to even those people who, like you, we're on Be the Bridge right now.
Right.
And there are so many things that come along with carrying this humongous weight that
Yes.
people don't get to see.
Right.
And I would never take an opportunity to write a book like this and withhold even that from
Mm.
the people who were reading it. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you brought that up. I love that chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, when you do heavy lifting or you're in hard work, sometimes, like like you said, although you were singing about hope, you were feeling hopeless.
Yep.
You
Mhm.
were in the valley of despair. And
Yeah.
sometimes that happens. And I think really as we talk about that, I've been trying to be honest about like where I am as you deal with grief and
Yeah.
as you heal forward, and talking about, hey, you know what, this is a difficult season. You know,
Yep.
this is like to be in the space of racial healing right now
Yes.
is hard because it
Yeah.
does feel hopeless,
Yes.
but fighting through knowing who our hope is in, and
That's right.
not just looking at the tangible things. And so
Yeah.
I think you do a great job of helping create tools and resources for us to
Wow.
look beyond our circumstances,
Wow.
to look beyond what we see. And it's a reminder of whose we are and who we see. And I think that's the
Yeah.
thing where the music that uplifts and things. And now you're writing words, to go along with that. And I was looking at this, Tasha. I was like, mm. Every last one of these songs is a title to a song.
Right, every
Every
chapter,
last one of these chapters. Every last one of these chapters. That's a title right there. Like it's a song right there. And that's what it kind of
Wow.
seemed like. It seemed like a you were charting music, you know?
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, charting music and everything. Who, we all have people that we look up to, and who has been an empowering voice to you in your career, especially as a Black woman, who has been who has helped empower you and to help like carry you into this
Yep.
place that you're in now.
I love this question, and it's going to seem like a simple answer, but I have to be honest, my mother.
I
My
love it.
mother is, somebody said something the other day, and it just really, really stuck with me that she's still, we don't think about it this way. They said, you're still raising her. And it may be in a different way now that I'm an adult, but she still covers me. She's the one who, when I've been on tour for a while, she'll show up at my house and say, I need to look in your eyes. You can say anything to me, but I want to see your face, and so she's the one who knows the truth, that pure Tasha, that, hey, I'm tired right now.
Yeah.
And I may not be able to say it to everybody, but you can see straight through. She knows the words to say. She's my ultimate cheerleader. Not just mine. I tell everybody, my mom may not even know you, but she's your biggest cheerleader. My mother believes in everybody. And just to have her in my corner is just, it's just incredible. And I think too, when I think about that, it's the fact that she's known me and she's still proud. So that means when she looks at the Tasha she sees now, it's the same Tasha she birthed. That I didn't allow all of the things that have come with life to change me, to penetrate that foundation that she and my dad created, that she still sees what she poured in me. And that makes me proud, because I want her to look at me and see, wow, my baby girl grew up and she took all of the lessons we taught her, and she's really, really using them to help other people grow. So it's my mom. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. There you go again. Lifting up our elders, giving them their flowers while they are with us. And
That's
I think when you go through things like we've gone through, you appreciate people like that, especially the parent you have left. You really see that, sometimes they get under your skin, but you're like, you know what? They're not going to always be here with us.
Right. I told somebody the other day, I was talking to him, I was like, now the roles have switched. I know he just said, you raising me, but I'm raising you.
Yeah. I was doing that. I have to actually tomorrow take my mom to get a colonoscopy. And I've been telling her to do this for years,
Right.
And I just have to get on her. And you feel like I'm raising you. Listen, do what I say. Like,
do what I say.
Yes. But she's doing it, and I'm so grateful that she's doing it. So, this is the thing. I'm also, I have a book. Your book is coming out May 7th. Okay. My book comes out May 21st. You see the Tasha, yes. And in this book, I talk about a lot about systemic racism. It's called Brown Faces, White Spaces.
Yes.
And so I want to know, just being, and one of those areas I talk about is entertainment.
Yeah.
Have you dealt with any racism within the entertainment industry? And would you mind sharing, what that could look like for you? Yeah.
Absolutely. I love the title Be the Bridge, because my mentor, William Murphy, I remember when I moved to Atlanta in 2006, he would say, it was MySpace at the time, and he would get on and post a picture of me and say, hey, this is my daughter, and she's a bridge to the nations. Wow. And at the time, I didn't understand what he was saying, until Break Every Chain came out, and it began to cross over into different cultures, different nationalities, and it was everybody, was singing this song, There's Power in the Name of Jesus, to break every chain. And so I started getting invited into white spaces, like your book says. And I remember I'm a Pentecostal holiness girl. So
Yeah.
all I got is, it's me. And
It
though
is.
I'm able to be all things to all people, I can only be authentically me. And so you
Yes.
got the raw, you got the stand up and lift your hands.
Yeah.
And people were loving me being me. But then I started to notice, that when I would go into the predominantly white spaces or white churches, you don't see a lot of brown people who were entrusted with spaces of authority. So yeah, you can sing in the choir, and yeah, you can worship on the worship team, but we don't want to give you too much of authority. And so I started thinking, man, is this what being a bridge to the nations is about? Because I don't see a lot of progress. Even though it's 2006, 2009, 2012, it's looking more like the 60s over here. Yeah. And so I remember just having lots of conversations with different mentors about it. CeCe Winans is a mentor of mine. Yeah. And I would just watch her life, how she even navigated through those spaces very, very well. And I would ask a lot of questions. And even for me personally, I remember going into different places. Oh God! Now that you brought this up, it's so many because it's been so many years. Yeah. I've been able to be trusted to be one of those voices to bridge those gaps. And just recently, last year, I went on a tour. It was called It's Time, and so it was me, Natalie Grant, Naomi Rain, Taya from Hillsong, who's actually from Australia. So you got all of this diversity, and I really felt like God wanted to do something not just for the audience that was before us, but even for us, being able to have those hard conversations behind the scenes. And we did, I think a lot of times privilege comes with being able to deny it or ignore it. Mm-hmm. So there are some privileges that are afforded to our white sisters and brothers that they don't even know to put a focus on. And so you have podcasts like Be the Bridge who puts it in their faces, but also educates while doing it. And I feel like that tour gave me an opportunity not to, and I'll be honest with you too, that sometimes we in the Black community, we can learn a lot of things as well. Like our approach. I learned not to be so offended because honestly, I'm looking and your privileges, it has blinded you. So you really don't know what you just said. And you don't know what you just did. So why would I confront it with aggression instead of, hey, let me educate you in this area. What you just said, it was offensive to me and this is why. You know, I feel like it taught us as well, those of us who are Black, who were on the tour, okay, this is the way you can approach this, because your sister really don't know what she just did. She really doesn't know that it was offensive. And so we had an opportunity to have some very hard conversations. And I believe that we all left that tour better. Not just the people who received songs and they received breakthrough, but we also left as better people, having a deeper conversation and deeper fellowship with one another. And my commitment that if I have to do it one by one, I'm committed to being a part of this change. I'm committed to being a part of being someone who helps others become better at bridging this gap. So I've ran into it, and I know we could get into this conversation much.
It's so good.
Surface of some of the things that I've seen, where now, and when I visit those predominantly white churches from when it was 2010, seeing what I saw, I can honestly testify that going into some of the predominantly white churches now, you see more African Americans who have voices of authority, and they're being trusted with microphones, and they're being trusted to share their hearts and their minds. And I can take pride in saying I believe I played a major part in being able to help to bridge that gap. Yeah,
because music is powerful. It does change. It does connect us. It does bridge us. And what you were doing on that tour, that's bringing people who wouldn't necessarily be in the same audience together. Because like people who are necessarily fans of Tasha Cobbs may not be friends of I forget who you said.
Natalie Grant. Yeah.
Natalie Grant. Tasha Cobbs, but that bridging, what you were doing, you
Yes.
guys were actually being the bridge. And that's really how what we did started. It was like, local church girl, like wanting to have these conversations because you're my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And I don't want you going out like that. Like,
Right.
I'm going to take it that you just don't know,
You don't know.
but it's because you are a bridge builder, Tasha, because everybody, that's not everyone,
Wow.
and it's okay because we need a variety of different
Yeah.
people. We need some people that's going to burn it down. And then, and then on the other side of that, everybody's not going to educate you,
Yes.
And so
Right.
don't think that everybody is required to educate you, but those of us who are bridge builders that know that we are called into various spaces, then it is, we have to do that work of bridging. And so, like you said, like the audience got one thing, but you got another thing. And it takes a lot of humility, and so, you talked about like, denying that's a lot. I call it deny, defend, and deflect. And it's like those are the things that you don't. But if you have an open heart and you're walking in humility, especially as a Christ follower, your compassion and your empathy should cause you to walk in humility, to be able to receive, instruction from your brothers and sisters that are saying, I'm hurting and this is why.
Wow.
And so we are supposed to rejoice with those who rejoice, and and those who are suffering, we are also suffering because we're connected. We're one body, one body with many parts. And so I am so grateful for you. What is bringing you hope right now in this season that you're in? What is bringing you hope? We need it. Like, there's a lot of things to for us to be in despair about, but what is bringing you hope? And what can you communicate to our community right now about that hope?
My husband and I, you talked about it earlier. We actually started pastoring a church. We just celebrated 4 years, a 4-year anniversary at our church. We started in the pandemic.
Oh my goodness.
So our church for 2.5 years, we were literally just virtual online, just like this. And I experienced, it's crazy that you would say that because our vision is to restore hope to the community. And I mentioned it a few moments ago, if I have to do it person by person, one by one, and pastoring this community of people has given us an opportunity to watch people grow and develop. It's so rewarding, but it's humbling as well, that God would use us to weekly be able to pour into a group of people and help push them further towards purpose. And I know it may start with a small assembly of people. We have about 400 or 500 people show up every week now, and it's grown into that, and that alone is mind-blowing. But to watch their children and watch their families and their cousins come, and then the aunts come, because one person was changed, they go back and tell somebody else. I say it all the time that the word of mouth is still the greatest marketing tool there will ever be. And I think just being able to share that, hey, this one place, me going to this one service, hearing this one word changed my life, and then you go tell somebody at work, or you go tell somebody in the grocery store and spread the news. I think that is what the scripture talks about when it says go into the hedges and the highways. My story alone is compelling. You writing your book, that's compelling people to want to know more about Christ. Me writing my book is compelling people. And then to stand in front of this small congregation of people every week and know that they're going to go out and compel somebody, that is giving me hope. It's causing me, because I will be honest, there was a season with so much exposure to industry and to people who lacked integrity, or people who would just misuse and abuse people. I will be honest, going into pastoring, I learned one thing about myself, that I was losing hope. I had lost hope in people. I had lost faith and trust in the good of people. But being able to have community with these amazing people has restored my hope. I need to tell that to my husband. I never shared that, because I think restoring hope to the community, we're thinking about all the other people who were touched, but honestly, my hope has been restored through this community.
That's so good. Restoring Hope. A friend of mine, she has a mental health business, and it's called Restoring Hope. And that, I
Oh,
think that's a
wow.
beautiful thing. And,
Yes.
you're on tour, you're launching a book, you're leading a church. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you rest? Like, how are you resting? How are you resting? This is Auntie Tasha talking now. How do you rest?
Right. You know what? I love to sleep.
Okay.
It is one of my favorite things to do. Ask my husband.
Okay.
I still run in the room. Wake up, mommy, wake up. But I think it has to be prioritized. I've not always been this way.
Okay.
I was once the person who lived in the future, lived for what's next, super ambitious, wanting the next place of success to be fulfilled. And I realized that even through mothering a little bit more now, to don't be so serious. Tasha, sit down, calm down. Everything's gonna work out. And so I'm in a place now. I'm 42 years old, and
Okay.
when I hit 40, something happened where I was like, "Girl, relax.
Okay.
It's gonna work out." I used to be all up in arms, but now I'm just committed to resting in. And I think rest is
It's
not
so
always
good.
about sleeping, but I rest in the fact that everything that my hands touch, it is something that I'm called to. And I think people get weary and restless when you're trying to do things you were never called to. I am
good.
committed to only being involved in those things that I know is a part of my purpose in the earth. And that means, with that, I can rest in it. I can relax. I can calm down. So if I were to leave any advice for those that you might be younger or older, wherever you fit in this, if you're younger, find your purpose, find that thing that you're passionate about, that aligns with what you are drawn to, and rest in that. And don't allow anybody to force you to connect with, to be a part of anything that's not aligned with your purpose in the earth. And then you'll be able to rest in the things that you do.
That's so good. So good. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time. Thank you for writing these words. It's
Yes.
going to help so many people. Thank you for singing words that help so many people. And so we will be praying for you at Be the Bridge. And we knew this a little bit, just in the spaces. I was like, she's a bridge builder, because everybody
Yes.
can't navigate,
Wow. Yeah.
various spaces, and everybody's not called to do that,
That's right.
But we appreciate you, and you have a community of people praying for you, and just congratulations on the book. May the 7th, you guys, you can purchase this book where all books are sold. You can also pre-order now. I'm not sure. We'll find out when this is coming out, but you can pre-order her book and follow her on social media, and we'll post all of that a post when the show comes out. So thank you so much, Tasha Cobbs, for joining us on the Be the Bridge podcast. We are so grateful for you and for your work and for your ministry.
Thank you. Absolutely beautiful. I love your spirit. You my sister now with my name.
Yes, I know, right?
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.